everybody, welcome to the channel.
Hi, we're your hosts, Em and Jay.
And today the two of us are talking about some statements that were made recently by certain celebrities like Keira Knightley about Disney movies and Disney princesses. And the thing is, these statements, it's not just people like Keira Knightley who are saying these things.
Yeah, we've heard these kinds of things for years, honestly. And we just wanted to give our take on it, and we also want to make clear that these are our opinions and you don't have to agree with them. So just keep that in mind.
We're just explaining why we don't agree with this and giving some examples. At some point, it kind of became popular to hate on Disney movies and Disney as a company for basically not being, I guess, progressive enough.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
Keira Knightley, in an interview recently, said that Cinderella should have been able to save herself.
And also that the Little Mermaid is about a girl who gives up her voice for a man, so she doesn't feel comfortable showing those movies to her daughter.
And the thing is, it's fine to want movies that show a person who's in not a great situation overcoming that situation and finding a way out. Those are great. But I think that Cinderella and The Little Mermaid and a lot of these Disney movies, actually, we don't believe that these movies are just someone sitting around waiting to be rescued by a man.
Or a rich guy, as she puts it.
We feel like there's a lot more going on. So, for example, with Cinderella, she as a little girl loses her mother, and then her father remarries. She gets a new mother and two sisters, and that should be great. But then her father dies, and so now she has her stepfamily, and they should be a family, basically.
Exactly.
But instead, her stepfamily ends up abusing her. They banish her to the attic. She's forced to be a servant in her own home. She's denied basic things, and they're always picking at her. They're always, like, every chance they get. Her stepmother allows her biological daughters to practice music and do these things in the house. Cinderella doesn't get that. You know, she's never helping her stepdaughter.
She's denied the same ability to improve herself and her skills the way that her stepsisters are allowed to.
And so really, in every way, they're abusive.
Given how young she was when this all happened, they've kind of raised her to accept this submissive role.
And the thing is, you look at even adults, there are unfortunately a lot of adults who are trapped in abusive relationships and abusive situations.
It's not really something that people can just get out of, and you know, oftentimes they do need help. There's no shame in that. There's no problem with that. And for her to say like, oh, if you're in an abusive situation or relationship, just rescue yourself, obviously, as if it's something easy to do. And that kind of made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it felt very dismissive. Because the thing is, like, a lot of the time in an abusive relationship, the victim is made to feel like they have no other options, like no one else will love them.
Or even that it's that person's fault.
Yeah, there's always some kind of excuse that the abuser has. They're forced to believe that this is the way that it is. And for a child who is in an abusive home, you know, what other option do they have? This is the only world that they ever really knew. I know that for a lot of people on the outside, it might seem like, well, you could just leave. But it's like a mental trapping. Like, a lot of the time, it's not exactly like people can just walk away. So this event happens where the kingdom is throwing a ball because the king wants to find a queen for the prince. So he forces his son to put on this ball, which the prince isn't even interested in this ball at all. Like, at the actual event, he's yawning and he's clearly very bored and he doesn't want to be there. But he doesn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
So what's he gonna do? What can he do?
Say no to the king?
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is basically his duty. But the thing is, Cinderella, as a young maiden, technically, she should be at that ball. It's the king's orders. But her family even tries to keep her from that.
Yeah, and all she really wants is to have fun. She didn't go to the ball specifically to meet the prince and marry him.
That didn't even seem to cross her mind. She just wanted to go to the ball because it sounded like fun.
And then when she does go to the ball, she ends up fashionably late, And when she's there, she isn't paying any attention to the prince. She's looking around and she's in awe.
I think she's just in awe of even being there.
Exactly.
Like, she made it.
And she didn't get some kind of grand entrance or anything.
Yeah.
She just walks in.
Nobody, like, announced her or anything. She's just there. And she's just so happy to be there. Like, that's all that matters to her, is that she's there.
And then when the prince notices her, he gets intrigued. And I don't think it's just because she's pretty.
I think that he was able to make a connection with Cinderella that he wasn't getting from anybody else who was there. And I think it was because all the other people who were there, they had an agenda.
Yeah.
They were there specifically, well, for what the king ordered them to be there for. You know, it's not like it's their fault. This is their chance to become royalty, marry a prince. I'm not going to blame them for that. But the thing was, the prince, he's a person too. The prince believed in romance and he wanted to fall in love before getting married, but his father didn't care about that. He just wanted his son to get married and settle down and have an heir.
He wasn't really given the option the way he should have been.
It is a lot of pressure for him. He has to basically find a bride in one night, and he's not even interested in the first place. He clearly was not having a good time, and he wasn't interested in any of these people because I don't think that they were really interested in him as a person. I think that they were just interested in what he represented.
Fame and the fortune and the title. Instead of seeing Henry, they saw the prince.
Yeah.
And even the movie never mentions his name or anything, so in a way the movie is also framing it as his plight of not being seen as an individual, but just as a title.
True. When he meets Cinderella, she's just there to have fun. She's there to have a good time. And maybe he was looking for that. They're having such a good time together, they don't even care about who the other person is. Like, it doesn't matter that he's a prince and she's a servant, basically.
Yeah, maid or something.
All that matters is that they're having fun. Cinderella realizes that it's midnight and she has to run off. He realizes that they never got each other's names and that's a problem, but she has to run. And then the only thing that's left behind is a slipper. She wasn't even waiting for being rescued. She had accepted her life for what it was.
Yeah, she wasn't planning on escaping or anything.
She wasn't planning on marrying the prince. When she gets back, she's just back to her life.
Yeah, this is my life.
But she had fun at the ball.
Yeah, and that was good enough for
and
her,
she was so happy.
Sweet.
Later she finds out that the prince is looking for the girl that he was dancing with at the ball. That's when it's like, okay, wait a second. This is my chance to get out of here. She wasn't ever really waiting to be rescued. She had just accepted that this was her life.
Which is a problem, but it's also, unfortunately, oftentimes the situation with these kinds of victims.
People get so caught up in a situation that they just kind of accept that this is the way it is and there is no way out.
And that's really unfortunate.
And she was able to get a way out. And I don't know why that's such a problem for so many people, just because like a man was involved.
It was technically the fairy godmother who set the ball in motion, so I don't even know if it's fair to give Henry all the credit. I think that Kristen Bell had a better approach. After movies like Snow White and so on, she sits down with her kids and says Snow White made a mistake by accepting food from a stranger and letting her kids understand that you shouldn't do that, which I think is a good moral to teach kids. Always be wary of strangers. You don't know who they are and they could not have your best interests in mind, and kind of go over these mistakes with them so they learn. And, you know, that's Kristen Bell's choice and she has the right to do that.
There are parents who decide that something is not right for their kids and so
fine.
They don't want their kids to watch it. Like with Harry Potter, there were a lot of parents who didn't want their kids to read Harry Potter for various reasons. They believe that that's what's best for their kid. And I'm not trying to judge them as a parent, but maybe there's a different perspective that is being overlooked. Like with The Little Mermaid, actually. The Little Mermaid, Ariel, has this real fascination with the surface world, and her father believes very much that the surface world is dangerous, and, you know, he might be right about that. Her fascination with the surface world, I think, is deeper than just she saw a handsome guy.
Yeah, she has an entire cave full of stuff that she's collected. She's clearly been collecting this over the years.
Many years.
And it's been a long time that she's been intrigued by it. And she wants very much to experience it and see it for herself. But her father has put such a tight lid on it that he's probably doing more harm than good, but he doesn't realize it.
He, in a weird way, is doing kind of what Keira Knightley seems to be doing, where...
But to a much bigger extreme.
Yeah, like way more.
Like when he destroyed all of her stuff in her cave, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes he could do, because that's just going to make her double down on her feelings.
Because she had worked so hard to collect all that stuff, and years of work was destroyed in just a couple moments.
Yeah, imagine if your dad came into your room and did that. It's going to be very traumatizing, really. She ends up lashing out, and when she signs the contract, I think it wasn't just that she was in love with Eric. I think it's also that she wanted to spite her father.
Because she has this idea that the grass is greener on the other side already. Like, she has such a fascination with the surface world, but she also has this idea that it's probably better up there than what it's like for her under the sea. Sebastian sings about that when he says the seaweed is always greener. But her father, instead of allowing her maybe to explore the surface world in a safe way, like maybe they could actually study these things. Maybe it would actually be good for him to also learn more about the surface world. But he doesn't see any of that. He just ends up destroying everything. She already had this issue where she was feeling like things were better up there, and then now here's her chance. You know, Ursula knows that she's vulnerable. She knows that Ariel is
in a moment of weakness.
She's just experienced a horrible thing where her father destroyed all of her work, and her father is probably the person who cares about her the most, but Ariel in that moment feels like her father is her enemy
and that he hates her.
So Ursula takes advantage of that. She's been monitoring the situation very, very closely, and so Ursula is like, this is my chance, and she jumps on it, and she gets Ariel to sign this very binding contract. Ariel knows. I think Ariel knows,
at least
in the back of her mind,
yeah.
She knows that this is not a good idea, and she knows that giving up her voice isn't a good idea.
Which is why Ursula chose to do it at her weakest. She wouldn't have done it normally.
No, absolutely not. I think that Ariel, she's even questioning it. How am I going to do this without my voice? Like, she clearly doesn't want to. But I don't think that this was just about Eric. I don't even think Eric was like the number one thing. I think that was just
And I understand that like people can watch the same movie or consume the same piece of media and get totally different things out of it.
Yeah.
Like to Keira Knightley, she sees a girl who pretty much signed her life away, her soul away for a guy that she thought was hot. But we can watch the same movie and see a young, passionate woman who feels betrayed by her father and that he's holding her back.
And she probably thinks that she could do better without him.
Yeah, and that she'd be happier without him. And you know, it was a mistake, but when you're in that fragile state of mind, it's easy for people to take advantage of that.
Keira Knightley goes on to say that other movies like Frozen and Moana, she lets her daughter watch those movies. And I actually thought that was kind of funny because years ago, I was in high school and I had this English teacher who was basically saying the same thing, that he didn't let his daughter watch certain Disney movies. He would let his daughter watch Mulan, but not other Disney movies. And the example he actually gave was The Lion King, which isn't a Disney princess movie. And I remember back then being, you know, a kid in high school, I remember disagreeing, but I wasn't really able to put into words why I disagreed.
Yeah.
His argument was that, for example, The Lion King, Scar takes over Pride Rock and things don't go well for the lions. And he was saying that Nala made this big deal about getting Simba back. Simba is
the rightful heir to the throne.
Yeah, the prince of Pride Rock and the son of the king, Mufasa. And he was saying, oh, why does Nala bother trying to go find Simba when she could just wrestle Scar easily because Scar isn't very strong. Obviously, Nala is stronger. She could totally take Scar. And the weird thing is, I don't know, maybe he forgot that Scar commands an army of hyenas. And yes, I'm sure that Nala could take Scar in a fight, but Scar isn't really a fighter. He's more of a tactician, like he's a leader.
Yeah, and he has an army. Like that whole Be Prepared song number, there were so many hyenas. I think normally they would be able to take on an army of hyenas, but considering the fact that the lions are low on food and are low on resources, they probably don't have the same energy and that they would normally have. And hyenas being scavengers.
Yeah, they're used to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The hyenas benefit from Scar, and that's why they're following him. They don't even really like Scar, but because they benefit from it, they just kind of go with it. But could Nala take an entire army of hyenas?
So getting the rightful heir to the throne probably would have been a better idea.
The other thing that my teacher was saying was that Simba was whiny, and he didn't understand. He didn't understand like why Nala was so convinced that he was the right person to take the throne. But I don't know. Maybe he forgot that Mufasa died, and Simba cried over his dead body, and that Scar told Simba that it was his fault, and he told him the right thing to do was run. To Simba, Scar was actually someone that he liked. He was his uncle.
And was very trusted.
Scar didn't like him, but Simba didn't know that. Scar is someone that Simba looked up to and trusted. And when your uncle tells you that you're responsible for your own father's death and the death of his brother, what are you supposed to do? The other lions, they lost Mufasa too, and they loved him. The king dies, and then the prince is missing, is dead. To them, they probably were like, yeah, Scar should take over, that makes sense. But then when things start to go bad, the lions start to feel like maybe if Simba was around, things would be better. Maybe he'd be a better king. And the thing is, people don't have to like these movies. It's fine. People can like what they like, and they don't have to like what they don't like. I do think that there's a lot of different ways to interpret these movies. And if people do like these movies, that's not a problem either. I just don't think that it's necessarily fair to be that dismissive. Like with Simba, Simba's pain was real, and I think he deserved a little bit the benefit of the doubt. I mean, yeah, he got really caught up in the Hakuna Matata thing, but he went through a really traumatic experience, and I don't think it's fair to just dismiss everything about him because he was kind of whiny. My teacher did say that he would allow his daughter to watch Mulan because she was a strong female character who broke gender norms.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I kind of feel like when people use this argument, they're not really giving Mulan all the credit she deserves, because she did it not for her own sake. She joined the army to protect her father, who she believed would die if he went to war, and he most likely would have. So she did it to save his life more than anything, more than to make a statement, and that says a lot about her character and the love she has for her family.
She did also make a political statement, and we're not trying to take that away from her.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the beginning of the movie, she actually is trying really hard to fit into the gender norms that her culture has. And when she fails at it, she really struggles about who she is and what she's meant to be.
And if she can succeed and make her family proud of her the way she wants.
And when the war starts, she kind of puts aside her concerns about herself for a little bit because she's concerned about her father, because she knows that he's going to die if he goes off to war. So she decides to go to war for him,
risking her own life in the process.
And also, not just from possibly getting killed in the war, but also if she's discovered. It seems like a lot of the time people try to make it out to be as if she just knew about this law and thought it was wrong and decided to go against it because she wanted to make a statement.
And they're kind of not acknowledging the other aspects to her character that make her a strong character regardless of what kind of statement she made.
Mulan's a strong character for a lot of different reasons, not just because she's a woman who went to war. Ultimately, these are our opinions, and it's totally fine if people have different opinions, if people don't care for Disney, even if people think that it's harmful.
Yeah, we're just giving our 2 cents on the matter, just to give a different take on what this argument has been. Because we've been hearing these things for years and years.
And it doesn't sound like it's going away anytime soon.
And there's nothing wrong with it. We can have these discussions. Do you think the princesses are harmful, or do you think that they're strong characters in their own right?
Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye, guys.